Good afternoon. I'm Misty Benjamin with Idaho National Laboratory. We have had a fire that we've been following for over a day now. It's the sheep fire. Here to help us better understand where the fire is, how the facilities are working together, and some of the curtailments that have happened is Juan Alvarez. He'll be introducing a panel of other speakers. Juan Alvarez is our Chief Operations Officer, as well as our, at INL, Idaho National Laboratory, our Deputy Laboratory Director. Thank you, Juan.
Thank you, Misty. Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. As Misty mentioned, my name is Juan Alvarez. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for the Idaho National Laboratory. I want to first start by expressing my gratitude and that of our Laboratory Director, Mark Peters, who's in DC, happens to be in DC when this fire broke out, to everyone involved in the firefighting efforts. That includes the Bureau of Land Management and INL firefighters, who have gone above and beyond to protect our people and our facilities. But when something like this happens, it involves much more than the direct firefighting efforts. Since the cheap fire sparked at 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, a diverse group of people have stepped up to the plate. Let me kind of summarize a little bit for you, all of those that have been involved. Starts with our partners in the Department of Energy, who today I'll have the opportunity to introduce you to Bob Boston, who is our site office manager here for the Idaho site office, who have provided us the resources needed to fight the fire. Our state government partners, including Governor Brad Little and the Department of Environmental Quality Director, John Tippett. Power companies for their response to our commercial power concerns. As you could imagine, in a fire of this nature, maintaining continuity of power is very important, and our partners have been tremendous in supporting us in that effort. Our employees, who have skillfully addressed the challenges associated with the fire and closure of several facilities across the INL site. Those facilities were closed as precautionary measures to keep our people safe and to make sure firefighting efforts were not impacted in any way. I cannot tell you how much all of us at INL appreciate the great working relationships we have also with the local, state, and federal partners. Those of us who live in the West understand that this is fire season. We know the events such as the cheap fire are not just possible, but predictable. We expect this and we plan for it. What we've seen so far is that our preparation has allowed us to limit this fire's impact, despite its size, on our people and our property. Because of this, there have been no injuries associated with the sheep fire. Second, as you no doubt read in our most recent news releases, the fire has been partially contained and no longer poses an immediate threat to key research facilities at the INL site. Commercial power on the site has not been impacted. Across the INL, air samples have been collected and will continue to be collected. The air samples that have been analyzed to date show no radioactivity release. We have also sampled for air quality because of the heavy smoke in the air. Many of you can see that even in our own city here, which fell into the EPA air quality index of low to moderate for smoke and dust. So we feel comfortable that we are able to perform in that environment and provided the proper precautions to staff who may be susceptible to that environment, people that suffer maybe from respiratory illnesses. The fire has now burned more than 110,000 acres. This could become the largest fire recorded in the history of the INL. Defensive actions are being implemented to keep the fire under control and away from key facilities. So we continue to obviously actively fight this fire. We're going to have the fire chief for the Idaho National Lab speak to you about some of the details of the firefighting techniques and where we stand and bring us up to date on where we are. With that, I want to introduce my colleagues that are sitting here that will be here available to answer questions. And in the case of the fire chief, I'm going to ask him to make some remarks about where we stand on the firefighting efforts. So to my right, I got Bob Boston, who is the manager of the U.S. Department of Energy Idaho Operations Office. Bob?
As Mr. Alvarez noted, we plan and we expect wildland fires to occur. I'm very pleased to announce that the Department of Energy and our contractor partners have performed very well during this effort to protect the workers and the public. I also want to personally thank the Bureau of Land Management and our other mutual aid partners in the firefighting efforts. That includes the Forest Service, City of Idaho Falls, West Jefferson, the City of Hamer, and numerous others. So again, thank you for those efforts.
Also want to introduce Fred Hughes, who is the president of Floor Idaho Limited Liability Company.
I wanted to echo what Juan said. There's been a lot of great teamwork between the contractors and the Department of Energy, as well as the fire departments in fighting this fire. With respect to the waste facilities at the Radioactive Waste Management Complex and Advanced Mixed Waste Treatment Project, we went back to normal operations this morning and in fact made several shipments to the waste isolation pilot plant in New Mexico. I have a small group of utility operators up at the Idaho Nuclear Technology and Energy Center. They're going through the facilities one at a time, making sure the support systems are operational and everything is normal. Thank you.
And I would like to introduce Andy Wenzel, who is the Naval Reactors Facility Site Director.
Thank you, Juan. I too want to echo my thanks for all the cooperation and communication that's been going on between my team at the Naval Reactors Facility, as well as Naval Reactors Headquarters and the INL. There's been great cooperation and communication as we get through this event. Yesterday, NRF had an orderly shutdown and curtailed operations at 10 o'clock a.m. as a precautionary measure and in support of the firefighting efforts. That curtailment is extended through swing shift and mid shift tonight to support those ongoing efforts. So again, I appreciate the cooperation between our organizations.
And finally, let me introduce someone who is right at the front line of this, fighting this fire. Yesterday, we weren't able to get him off the line, but today we were fortunate to kind of pull him, and without even getting a moment's rest. I want to introduce you to Chief Eric Gosweiler, who is the Idaho National Lab Fire Chief, and is the person right in the forefront to fight this fire. Chief?
Thanks, Juan. Can I just take questions?
You can.
No. Okay, can I have the mobile so I can get in
Yes.
front of this thing?
It's live.
Thank you. Well, thanks for coming. I'm Eric Gosweiler, and we've got a basic footprint of our fire, and it's really not too far off. I'm going to do a couple things to this to make it a little more accurate. Basically, I'm going to take a line here, and I'm going to run it over to about right there, and I'm going to extend this up into somewhere up in there, and bring this over about like that. And I'm going to tie this right back in below our NRF facility. And that is basically the footprint of the sheep fire, give or take. Yesterday was a very challenging day. This is one of the most extreme, erratic fires that I've experienced in my career at INL. Did a lot of things that we don't usually see in morning periods. For those reasons, it got very large. Very good effort by the team yesterday. We were able to get basically a line around this north end in anticipation of the afternoon shift in winds. Get that actually built all the way back into what we call Lincoln Boulevard. And so this section was actually one of our top 2 priorities in our firefight yesterday and into the evening. And then the other big hitter for us was basically making sure this fire didn't get across Highway 20. We worked across what we call our haul road here. Backfiring off of this road. We completed that effort about 11 o'clock last night. This morning, we had one remaining area of primary concern, something about like this. So this morning, we've been busy backfiring in this this section to kind of sectionalize, bring everything into a box, if you will, with this fire. We've pretty much got there. We're not going to say this 100% contained by any means. We anticipate by tonight, if we survive the wind shifts this afternoon, that we'll be comfortable calling this fire 50 to 60% contained. And if that's the case, hopefully everything will go well tomorrow, and we'll be in a pretty good spot at this time tomorrow. So, in a nutshell, that's the fire and what we've been doing. You know, our Citric facility, our MFC and treat facility, our National Security Test Range facility, all took direct hits, and we had zero loss of any structures or property. The main issue has been our power grid, as Juan alluded to. We've got a heavy team of people out there right now as we speak. They're out working what we call the Montana line, running up to the north, repairing structures that burned on fire. That's one of our primary focuses for the day. Very appreciative of our cooperative agencies. A fire of this size, we don't do this ourselves. Right now, this is the largest fire in the lower 48 so far this year. It really demonstrates the capability of INL Fire and our regional partners in addressing a major problem like this safely. I'm very proud of the efforts. Very thankful of BLM, the Forest Service, and especially our cooperative agencies with our reciprocal firefighting agreement. Bob mentioned a few. We've had numerous. We had 15 engines that supported us from other agencies. We'll be slowly releasing them today. So right now we have 20 engines on site. We'll probably be dropping back to about 15 this evening. I think those are my remarks. If I take any questions.
You mentioned structures, but structures and facilities, so what's the difference in that? So
When I say structures, I mean improved property buildings. Okay. We have not lost any buildings at the site. We have lost a few power structures, if you will, which is anticipated. One of the things we did at INL, learning from previous fires, was we've treated all of our key grid infrastructure with fire retardant paint, and we hadn't had an opportunity to see how that works. I'm proud to say that we didn't lose a single structure of the INL power grid. It really worked. So that was nice to see.
but Rocky Mountain Campus.
Yes, we're dealing with some loss of their structures.
So we'd like to open for questions for the chief related to the firefighting defensive techniques.
Go ahead.
What's your biggest challenge with the wind shift this afternoon?
The biggest challenge will be making sure that we don't get embers or fire whirls that pick up from those winds and go across the line and then start uncontrolled fire. So we've got firefighters deployed strategically around the entire perimeter, working hot spots to minimize those things that might get picked up by the wind, and being ready at the ready if we have something that jumps the line.
And you said that by tomorrow, hopefully you have it more, at least more contained than today. Do you expect it to be fully out by the end of this week?
I do. You know, I don't like to make predictions, but I feel very comfortable about where we're at right now. And I fully expect that we'll be, with the capability that we have and the people we have out there, that we'll be in a pretty good spot tomorrow night, probably ready to start ramping down some of our operations.
You mentioned you have 20 engines out there working. How about specific personnel? How many numbers of people do you have?
We're roughly 105, I think, as I was leaving, knowing that we're going to be releasing, we'll release 5 engines around 12 o'clock today.
Are there any common areas of the fire that you're particularly concerned about today, or like areas where it's still spreading?
The hottest spots today that we were concerned about was the section along Lincoln Boulevard. That's where we didn't have a line built in last night. It was really our only unsecured portion. So we did a lot of backfiring in that area this morning. This area was really active yesterday. So this is probably our second concern is the south perimeter. We've got a full team in that location. And then we've got other folks just basically patrolling and cold trailing the balance of the fire.
Is the fire moving in a specific direction?
This fire has moved in every direction at one time. Right this morning, it's doing what's more prevailing for us is southwesterly winds. So they're pretty predictable, and it actually really assisted us in this backfiring operation.
Thank you, chief. And
Okay, thank you.
if any other questions come up related to firefighting, we'll get the chief back up here. But I'd like to open it up now for any questions you have of any of us related to the management of this fire and the response, and any concerns that you think will be important for us to inform the public. Yes, sir.
You mentioned before that there's radiological testing going on. Could you go more into depth of what that's for and what you're looking for?
We want to make sure that because the Idaho National Laboratory is a nuclear complex, that the fire itself hasn't gone through any legacy areas where 50 years ago, there was some operation and there might be some radiological contamination buried in the soil, that the fire had not resulting in any unplanned release of radioactive material. And I'm happy to say that we haven't had any release of radioactive material, and there hasn't been anything that we have detected that will be of concern to us. Yes.
As far as the workers, when will they be able to go back to work?
That decision, we're hoping at 2 o'clock. Actually, many of us are going to be on the phone to revisit that decision based on the assessment from the fire chief. We believe that there's a high probability we'll probably be able to reopen the facilities tomorrow to start the day shift.
And have these days been taken out of their vacation time, their PTO, or just?
No, these days are reimbursable. So as far as they're concerned, these are days that we kind of plan for the fact that there could be a loss of workday as a result of a fire because again, this is the fire season, this is the West. We kind of know this happens. So the employees are they're not being asked to take leave. This will be a reimbursable cost that we provide to them. Yes, sir.
So, which facilities are still closed and which ones are back to normal operations?
Which facilities are now closed?
Right, and which ones have gone back to normal operations?
So currently, as far as the Idaho National Lab, and I'll let my colleagues speak to their individual locations. At the Idaho National Lab, the Materials and Fuels Complex has been essentially only essential personnel. The Advanced Test Reactor the reactor itself has been shut down and it's in a safe condition and also operating with essential personnel. The Central Facilities area, also operating with essential personnel. And all the test ranges that we have, also operating with essential personnel. The only Idaho National Lab facility that's at full speed, that's located at the desert site, is the specific manufacturing capability, which is all the way north out of the range of this fire. We are currently prepared in case of the fire, worst case, if it does jump the line and could present a risk to that facility, we already have pre-staged buses with bus drivers to evacuate them if needed. Right now, we feel pretty confident that that's not going to be necessary. Let me turn it over to Fred to speak to the Idaho Cleanup Project facilities and the same thing to Andy for Naval Reactors facilities.
Yeah, for the cleanup project, the radioactive waste management complex, and advanced waste treatment project are fully operational. All the employees reported this morning. At Intech, I have a crew of essential personnel that are out there.
And as I mentioned earlier, the Naval Reactors facility is in a curtailment through mid-shift, and we'll make the decision later this afternoon, along with the rest of the INL facilities, whether or not we're going to open for normal business tomorrow.
And I'm fully operational.
Thank you, Andy. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I assume y'all are working on various projects on these different sites. Is that gonna are these days gonna set back those projects?
There will be a mission impact. I do not have a feel for what kind of impact on schedule, let's say deliverables. So we've obviously lost about a day and a half of operational time. In some cases, like the reactor itself, it's not critical, it's not operating. So we're losing the opportunity to irradiate materials. So there is an impact. I just do not have the answer specific as to how much of it can be made up or how much is a loss for the year. Yes, sir.
So, which local fire departments have sent cruiser engines?
Which fire departments?
Yeah.
Fire chief?
I'm gonna go off memory, and I do not want to leave anybody out. But I'll start. Idaho Falls Fire Department, I know we've got 2 engines. Ammon, I know we have 2 engines currently on the fire. We had assistance from Yukon. We had assistance from Income. We had a couple engines from West Jefferson that were released last night because they had their own fire that occurred yesterday evening. Similar status with Hamer. We had Hamer, a couple engines that we released so they could take care of their own neighborhood. Teton County sent us several engines. Idaho Department of Lands has sent us an engine. We've had a lot of help. And if I left anybody out, it's because it's been a long night. So we really appreciate their assistance.
Thank you, Chief.
Have any air support?
Yes, we've had a lot of air support. We put a lot of retardant on the fire yesterday. It was very helpful. We had one VLAT, very large air tanker, running out of Pocatello. And I believe 3 heavy tankers and a couple of seats. So we flew a lot of aircraft yesterday. Today we're scaled back. We have 1 helicopter doing recon and mapping. We had an air attack platform this morning, and we don't expect to have to use any retardant today.
Thank you, Chief. Other questions? Yes,
What
sir.
kind of concern is there for the local wildlife, specifically sage-grouse, other animals like that?
This is an area where we have to do a post-event assessment. From experience from prior fires, vegetation obviously gets impacted. That means the essentially the ecosystem for some of our wildlife has been impacted, in particular like the sage grouse. We will have to go back and do a cultural resource assessment to see what the impact has been. And then we put together typically a restoration plan to get us to where we could restore some of the habitat that might have been destroyed by the fire. So there's a lot of work when the fire is out to continue to do, kind of deal with the impacts. So a good question, appreciate it.
You mentioned that this could be the largest fire in INL history at 110,000 acres. What was that largest fire previously, and when was it?
So the largest fire that I'm aware of was the Jefferson Fire that occurred in 2010, I think it was.
Right, correct?
Yeah, and it was about 140,000 total acres, but that included 30,000 from off-site, so it's about 110, right?
114,000 total, about 91,000 on site.
Yeah, there we go. The chief has that number's a lot better than I do. We think that this one, by the time it's over, will be the largest.
I agree.
How much of the acreage of this fire is on site?
All of it has been on site,
All of it?
yeah. And all of it has been unpopulated areas, for the most part, right? I think in the test ranges, we do stuff in the field, so you could always argue that they burn through some areas where we do testing, but none of it was where people reside or facilities reside. And when the chief mentioned, again, the structures, I just want to be clear, we're talking about things like power poles. The only structures that were damaged, as far as we're aware, for the Idaho National Lab, and we haven't done a complete assessment because some areas are still, we haven't fully assessed, has been power poles associated with our test loop that hasn't impacted our overall power distribution system. So that's why we've been able to maintain continuity of commercial power, which is essential to maintaining safe operations. Yes?
You said you expect this to be the largest fire, which means that it's gonna grow a little bit more, and then you expect it to die down, or to be able to contain it a little bit more.
Chief?
What do you know that instills that confidence? What facts do you know that it's like, oh, we're gonna be able to get a handle on this?
Basically, knowing the tactics that we put in place and knowing what the perimeter fire conditions look like right now, as well as the anticipated weather conditions this afternoon, putting all that into consideration, we're confident that those lines are gonna do what we need them to do. We're gonna have a lot of defenses out there in case they don't, but we're very confident that's gonna happen. There are a few unburned areas, well, we've burned out some remaining areas around the perimeter, which is gonna increase that acreage. We're gonna fly the fire at 2 o'clock this afternoon. We expect to have a better final map, not final map, but a map with updated acreage, which will kind of validate those numbers that we're throwing around right now.
Yeah, one of the things I want to, again, reinforce, it's the value that we place on the preparation for the fire season. In fact, I remember clearly about 2 weeks ago, the fire chief briefing us on the status of where the fire danger was and the level of preparations that go into getting us ready. And those preparations are the reason that I could stand here in front of you and assure you that none of our facilities were impacted, none of our people were impacted, and we've done our best to keep any impact at all from ever happening to the public. So the preparation has been very important, and it's something that we take a lot of pride on, in addition to the capabilities that we have for firefighting on site and with our partners outside the INL. Other questions? I want to thank you. If you have any follow-on questions you want to ask any of my colleagues afterwards in one-on-one, we'd be more than glad to accommodate you, and I appreciate you coming out this afternoon. Thank you.